This is called This One's for Peter. Now I called it This One's for Peter so I'd know which one it was. See, I'm always writing things down, poems, stories, daydreams, but then they tend to get lost, either buried deep on my laptop in some Russian doll system of folders within folders within folders, or if it's scribbled on a scrap of paper, it will hide in a drawer for years, or maybe burst free from a duffel bag that hasn't been unzipped since a trip to Filey in 2019. I'll watch the poem roll away, watch it skip along the pavement like a white rabbit. Then with a sudden gust of wind it leaps and becomes a dove. It takes flight. I'll watch it go. It flies, disappears way up now, beyond the firmament, off with the gods, the saints, the angels. And now no human eyes will ever read that bit of writing. But that's okay. Because far, far away, the gods receive these wayward doves, and they smile. They must. I'm certain that whenever the gods find one of these poems, they bless the one who has released it. Now this particular story ends on a gloomy Manchester morning on Greythorn Mount, but it starts in New Orleans about 5 years earlier. I'd had a job interview at a college there. After the interview, I spent a few days meandering around the city, taking it in, breathing the humid swamp air. One evening I was half drunk, wandering about aimlessly, sipping through a straw on a 1.5-liter cup of ice-cold hurricane. The sky was a bubblegum blue. There were palm trees lining the streets like lampposts. There were pelicans on the rooftops. I stopped at a city square and I sat down. Across the square, sat by some tables in the shade, I saw a voodoo woman. She was performing some kind of exorcism on a piglet. The piglet was squealing and squealing, writhing around in the woman's arms. A lady, shuffling tarot cards at the next table along, rolled her eyes and looked at her watch. I felt bad for her. Nobody wants to get their tarot read next to all that noise. I stood up and walked across the square. Sometimes when I'm half drunk I get sympathetic. "How much for a reading?" I said. $30, the tarot lady said. She had a strange accent, more European than American. She looked about 60 years old. She wore lots of pagan jewellery, all kinds of silver and string and stone. $30! I looked at the piglet, still writhing and screeching. The voodoo woman, big, mad-looking, a witch hunter's hat and a necklace of bones, watched me with dark eyes. $20, I said. Next to that noise, let's call it 20. The tarot card lady rolled her eyes. "Fine," she said. She held out her hand. I passed her a $20 bill. "My name is Vanya. Sit down." I sat down. I sipped my hurricane. The piglet let out a particularly loud squeal. The voodoo woman had set fire to some sage. She started to chant with a strange, deep grunting. Vanya turned over the first card. 10 of swords, she said. On the card there was a picture of a dead body. It was like a pincushion with 10 swords sticking out of it. Vanya looked at me. Her eyes were bright and green. "The knife has already touched the skin." "What does that mean?" I said. Vanya turned the next card and the next. Her eyes widened. "The devil," she said. Chains formed from your own hands. What does that mean? Vanya turned the next card. The hanged man, she said. The piglet stopped squealing. The voodoo woman stopped chanting. Surrender, said Vanya. You will perceive from the abyss. The whole city felt suddenly quiet, eerie. I will perceive from the abyss? What does that mean? I said again. Vanya's bright green eyes stared at me. I waited for something to happen, but nothing happened. Ah, whatever, I said. I stood up. Enjoy your $20, Vanya. I wandered off, muttering to myself about being conned. Nonsense anyway, I said. And it was nonsense. Of course it was. It didn't mean anything. But meaning is a strange thing. Meaning is like a fruit, a cursed fruit, one that only ripens in the dark. So, 5 years, a broken heart, 2 broken ribs, 1,000 lost poems and 100 bad decisions later, I was in England again, unemployed, skint, living in a prostitute's attic in some neighbourhood of Manchester that nobody had ever heard of. I woke up. I was on an old mattress on the floor. The grey blur of the morning seeped in through the skylight. On the ceiling, a pale, spindly spider crept with menacing delicacy through a jungle of cobwebs. I watched him for a while. And then I turned on my side. My pillow smelled of cigarettes and sweat. My head was foggy. I never got the job in New Orleans. It was always a little ambitious. And since then, every turn had been a wrong turn. Every bit of luck had been bad. Every light at the end of the tunnel had been a train. I closed my eyes again, hoping to sleep, hoping to die, hoping to disappear. And then I don't know why, I remembered the squealing piglet. It just came to me. I could hear it, that terrible sound, that awful little creature writhing and screeching. And then the words came to me. I heard Vanya say them as if whispering into my ear. You will perceive from the abyss. I sat up abruptly. Maybe Vanya was right. Maybe the tarot was true. I looked around the gloomy, empty attic. This must be it, I said to myself. This must be the abyss. It all started to make sense, and nothing had made any sense for such a long time that I got excited. I got out of bed. I peered out of the skylight, squinting at the world. I got dressed. I grabbed an old notebook, slipped on my shoes. I headed quickly and quietly out of the house. I headed down the alley. The cobbles were wet and gave a dull grey gleam. The neighbourhood was quiet. It was just me, a stray cat, and a rattling can of Rubicon. About a mile from the house there was a park called Greythorns. That's where I went. It was 7 a.m. I walked up Greythorn Mount, the big grassy hill where from the top you can see in the distance a foggy silhouette of the city, like a mirage on the horizon. I sat on a bench and I started to write. From the abyss, I wrote. A poet in the dark. I smiled to myself, and God knows I have perceived. I've witnessed it all. Death and cruelty, the cruelty of love, the forsaking of man, woman, culture, I wrote it down. I wrote it all down, mad and frantic, unfazed by hunger and fatigue, unfazed by the chill of the wind that ruffled the paper as I turned page after page in my frenzy. And maybe Vanya knew, I wrote. Maybe it's all been a test. From the gods. I wiped a tear from my eye. I laughed a while. The wind picked up, and the tatty old notebook couldn't take it. I watched as the pages broke free from the spine, and I didn't try and stop them. I smiled as I watched. One by one the pages flew. They soared up and whirled around in the air, gathering like a flock of gulls. I snatched the last few pages out of the book and launched them up into the air with the others. The glorious white birds circled a while, and then they flew away, one after the other. They flew further and further until they could no longer be seen. I sighed happily. I knew that soon the gods would receive these words, and they would be glad to have them. They would have to be. Otherwise, nothing meant anything at all. The clouds grumbled. A heavy rain fell suddenly and furiously. I stood up and hurried for shelter beneath a tree. I watched the rain fall harder and harder. Like the blessings, I said. The blessings that will come to the poets.